Well, good evening. Welcome to the Management Committee meeting on Wednesday, the 21st of October 2020, 7 p.m. via Zoom conferencing. Agenda item number 1, minutes of the last meeting, which are attached. To approve or adopt otherwise the minutes of the meeting of the Management Committee held on Wednesday, the 30th of September 2020. Page 5, 6, 7. Do I have a proposer that we note these?
I'll propose them, Mr. Mayor.
I think, was that Councillor Billy Brooks, was it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, can do, or whoever else.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know who said it. Two people speaking at the same time. I just saw two mics. Councillor Billy Brooks, approved. Seconder, please.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favour, please show your virtual hands. Thank you, that's carried. If you'd like to lower your hands. Agenda item number 2, to note apologies received by the Town Clerk prior to the meeting. Town Clerk, please.
Mayor, I've got apologies from Councillors Blackburn, Carpenter, Claxton, Empson, Kirk and Sutton.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edgington, have you got your hand up still? Because you forgot to put it down? Yeah, I think so, thank you. Agenda item number 3, to receive any declarations of interest. No declarations of interest. Okay, thank you. Oh, Councillor Edgington. Your microphone's still off, Councillor Edgington.
Right, as is customary, because I'm a member of the ELDC Planning Committee, I'll be leaving the meeting when we go to the planning items, as is the norm. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks, I presume for the same.
Yeah, the same. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cunnington, the same.
Thank you,
Councillor Billy Brooks, the same, usually, and Councillor Dennis as well, normally, do you believe? Is that correct, Councillor Dennis?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 4, the governance report quarter 2, report and appendices attached include income and expenditure and balance sheet, bank reconciliations to follow, which I think we have, risk register and outstanding actions.
Right, I'll go through this relatively quickly, but then I'll take questions at the end because I'm aware that we've got, quite a bit on the agenda. So straight into the financial reports, which you have in the appendices. Draw your attention to going through the list of headings. There's going to be pressure on employee costs. The town hall office costs, we weren't expecting any. We've got some because of the delay in moving, so that will be overspent. There's pressure on costs on supplies and services because of the pandemic. Then moving down, we need to keep an eye on the allotment income. It's slightly down. There is possibly the opportunity for that to recover. We'll have to wait and see. The Tower Gardens and Pavilion expenditure will be overspent at the end of the year. There's pressure on income because of in relation to the kiosks. On car parks, there'll be a significant shortfall on income. There's pressure on income on the cemeteries because we've had fewer burials and purchases of graves and memorials than we would normally have done at this time of year. The rest are pretty much where we would expect them to be. Moving on to the cafe and hall performance, there's a small sort of profit and loss account under 3.4. Bear in mind that we started in July, the first 2 weeks, more or less taken up with training the temporary staff in a situation where we were also only doing takeouts. The rest of July was outside service only. And obviously, if it was raining or bad weather, we lost those days completely. And then from August, we started to trade inside. Over those 3-month period, we've got a net deficit of about £13.60 on the cafe. With the haul, we're about £800 up. So that's doing better than we thought it would have done at this time. And I think we can see quite good prospects for the haul going forward. And I think cafe performance, given where we are, that we started in the pandemic, actually doesn't look too bad. And I think there is certainly, if we'd been in a normal year, I would have expected us to have made a surplus. Going forward, I won't report this month's figures yet because we haven't got them, but certainly we're still seeing reasonable trade on a day-by-day basis. So, and we've taken action to minimise the staff costs and also the cost of sales as well. We're keeping. It's only half the story though, because the positive news is that we are starting to see sort of the community role starting to. We've already got some groups. One group hosted by Magnavita, which are people, are groups of isolated people who come in because we've got a reasonably large space in the hall. They can actually come in little bubble groups, sit together in those bubble groups, and they have some things from the cafe as well, and it's quite nice to hear the sort of the socializing that's going on for people who would otherwise be stuck at home on their own at this time. The cafe manager has also started some groups, so we've got a craft group starting, a book group, a writers group, and again, we've had interest from people who have really are on their own. So that's doing the job that we would expect a community group and community building to start to do. We're trying to get a bit of funding for that. We've put out some feelers to the district council to see whether we can get some of the COVID grant that that was around. So if any district councillors have got some that they can give us, we can certainly use up to £2,000 on that. It would also be helpful because what we're finding is some of the people coming to the groups that we're running are sort of rummaging around with pennies to try and find something in a cafe that they can purchase, a drink or something. It would be nice if we can just put a pot of coffee on for those people. So that a grant is part of the COVID recovery, part of the getting through the COVID process with some of these people. So it would be helpful if some grants could be. We're also looking at other places to see whether we can get grants as well. It's difficult to get a grip on customer numbers at the moment because no 2 days is exactly this, as the same are expected, and it varies. Sometimes a rainy day people will come in, sometimes they won't. Some days a sunny day people will come in and they don't, and there's no consistent pattern as yet. So that's something we're going to have to build up over time, I think. So overall picture for the cafe and the hall when taken together over the first quarter is that we're looking at about a £500 loss in that quarter. So I think that gives a strong indication that there's great potential going forward. Moving on to I'll go through the whole report and then take questions at the end, if that's okay. Moving on to the risk management papers, which are in Appendix B. there's not a lot of difference from where we were previously, which is the risks that are rising, costs, budgets, risks related to COVID, the reserves, and also things like trees, which have been a bit of a problem this year. So those are the main risk areas that are rising, or we need to put some controls on. In terms of outstanding actions, again, there's a list in Appendix C. Draw your attention to item 70, which is the speed limit on Borough Road. The Deputy Town Clerk did put a Freedom of Information request in. We've had some feedback today, and we're going to be going through that to see whether the reasons they've put for not putting in a speed limit, whether or not there's additional evidence that could be provided that they could use, which may influence or change their decision. So we'll be having a look at that over the next few days, and then we'll obviously report back to council, but we'll also inform our county councillors as well, so that they can take up anything on our behalf. Operational report in section 6. We're about to start commissioning contracts for the servicing of various things. The 1 year sort of warranty period for everything expires on the 27th of January. After that date, we'll be expected to start undertaking the various servicing activity, so boilers, valves, the underfloor heating, ventilation, the changing place facility, the windows, the doors, the roof lights. There's a whole host of different things, fire systems, all of those things we need to make sure that we've got maintenance programs and where necessary, contract in place. So the costs on those will become clearer over the coming months. Jolly Fisherman pictures are back. We're just going through the process of actually arranging for those to be hung. It's quite a complex process to the alarm systems that we need to put in place and how those are going to work in that public environment. But hopefully in the next few weeks, those should be ready to be unveiled. Council reception, quite a few inquiries coming in which don't relate to town council services because the town hall is closed. And I've spoken to East Lindsey. There's no immediate prospect of that or any face-to-face facility opening in Skegness for people. That does mean that people who want homeless service or any other face-to-face contact service have to make a phone call contact and then make a specific appointment, which I know for some, by the people we're seeing, can be difficult. Hence, that's why they're arriving at our desk. But as I say, I don't think there's any prospect of that being resolved by East Lindsey anytime soon. And then just to report an incident in Tower Gardens with some overnight sleepers who were a bit intimidating, but thanks to the Deputy Town Clerk and some other staff, we managed to get them moved on. That's the operational report. Communications wise, there's a table there with the communications. We had a peak last quarter because of people trying to find information about COVID. That has now dropped off, hence that's why the figures have gone down again this quarter. We're not yet monitoring or recording here the interactions via social media for the cafe, but I can tell you we're having a tremendous impact there. Just one post alone reached 24,000 people. So we're doing, that is really, really positive piece of information, and we're getting loads of likes and shares and other things. So I'm quite happy that we're starting to get the message out, because I think that will help the success of the cafe going forward. So that's the report, but I can take any questions on any of those sections now.
Thank you for your report. Councillor Anderson, please.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the town clerk's report. I've read it with interest this afternoon. Excuse me. And I'm really surprised and happy how the cafe has performed during the pandemic, and it's been very difficult. And to see the figures, it did actually surprise me. I thought there would be a bigger loss than what there is, and yeah, there is great prospects for the cafe. The first comment I want to make is the district council should be making some COVID grant available to the town council, in my view, for the cafe, so we can actually help our school children eat during the half term. I know there's an MP vote tonight whether the government does supply free school meals for children, but I think we need to get on the front foot on this. And if we can help our school children out from poor families, so they can get a meal, maybe at our cafe, and get some grant, and maybe through the district council's funding as well, that would put us in a better position as a community hub for the residents of Skegness, and also helping out the most vulnerable. I also read in the risk register there's a lot of issues retaining to councillors' training. I think we need to get on with this. Some of them are important, like understanding financial issues, etc. And I think if we want to retain our gold quality status, then we need to all understand about business planning, finance, and how we can operate in these difficult times for the best of our residents. Also, further on, I want to comment about the kiosks as well, but I'll leave that to the.
All right, can I just remind Councillor Saxon and Councillor Cunnington have still got the microphones on, please?
Thank you. I'll leave that to the budget papers during the debate regarding that, but I'm happy to move the recommendations as set out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was just wondering if the clerk could say whether he's actually nudged the kiosk holders on about the rents that are due. I know East Lindsey have sent out letters now saying that kiosk holders should be looking at paying their rents. Mine's paid up completely, and I know a lot of others have. So I don't see why the town council's tenants should be any different. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Danny Brooks. Town Clerk will give you an update. I do ask the questions when I do go into the office.
Unfortunately, the whole situation is not completely straightforward, and obviously we're live on YouTube, and I can't talk about individual detailed cases, but there are, in respect of, there are some there's some legal advice going on in the background. There are notices that we have to send out that comply with the current regulations on commercial rent chasing under the COVID conditions. That runs through to the 31st of December. So that's essentially a notice which formally requests certain pieces of information, and if they don't provide that information, then that puts us in a very strong position once the government restrictions on basing commercial rents complete. We have one kiosk owner who is pretty much up to date albeit their payment plan within their lease is slightly different to the others. So they're pretty much up to date in terms of what we can invoice them for.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's regarding the Jolly Fisherman pictures. Will they be hung in like the cafe area? Because I went over there at the weekend and it looks quite a bare wall actually in the cafe. And also I noticed that there's lots of chairs near the, I think it's like an ice cream area. It did look a bit unsightly. Is there any way they could put them out even in the day or anything like that? Thank you.
Once the Jolly Fisherman paintings are going up on the wall to the left-hand side of the council reception. So you've got the old poster on one side, and then the two paintings will be on the other side. Once they're up, then there are plans to have a bit of a move around with the ice cream freezer. And that will allow us to get 2 or 3 more tables at that end, which and we're also looking at the potential. If you remember, we were looking at having some softer seating in that area, and so we will look at that. It is a slow process of trying to take out some of the starkness of the cafe. It is quite, black, obviously black and white. We had planned to sort of get it all fitted, but with things like, for instance, putting cushions on the chairs and that might be something that we move towards. But obviously, we need to be bearing in mind surfaces that are easy to wipe and keep clean. But I think once there are some more pictures to go up. Once those go up, I think next year we can look at the potential perhaps for some, potted plants and things like that in there to give it a bit more atmosphere. At the moment, it's pretty much we're trying to keep it so it's easy to clean and we will try and declutter that in where the fridge is. It might be that we need to look at some outside storage or something for the outside chairs which are stacked there at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you for allowing me to come back. Can I just concur with Councillor Brooks? It does concern me. I know the Town Clerk has given us an explanation regarding the kiosk, and I know we're in the public domain and we can't talk about individuals or tenants of ours whilst we're in this forum. But it does actually grind me when grants were given to tenants and businesses which were obtained for this purpose of paying rent and keeping the businesses established. And we know they have been trading, and Skegness has been quite vibrant during July and August. And also we're going into half term, and we know that these businesses have been open during the weekends and quite busy, what I can see on occasions I've been downtown. I think there's a long game here, personally. I know some of these tenants also have East Lindsey kiosks as well, and I'm wondering if they're playing a long game with East Lindsey District Council, which I doubt. I think we need to really get to grips with this with vigour, because when it comes to the budget debate, if we're not doing this and actually getting down with vigour to get the rent that's due to us, and we say to our local residents, we are going to subsidise these businesses so they can maximise profit, I think that will go down like a lead balloon. Can I just also raise the issue about the car park, Scarborough Avenue, Mr. Mayor? I've said at this time we need seriously, to look at income generation, and the 2 hours free parking, that needs to go. That needs to go. That was set in by East Lindsey District Council when I was on the District Council on the Scrutiny Committee, and that was given over as a free 2 hours for residents of Skegness. But now the District Council has given it to us. We've got to maximise that income. There's a huge loss on that due to COVID. Hopefully next year things will be better, but that 2 hours needs to go because we are subsidising holiday makers. I've spoken to the clerk and I understand where the town clerk comes in about bylaws, etc. But we should be pursuing this with vigour. If East Lindsey District Council is going to review its car parking charges, we should be asking them to review Scarborough Avenue as part of that process to take away that 2 hour limit, because it's costing us heavily on against our precept. And I'll leave it for there now, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to bring Councillor Steve Kirk in, if I can, because it's been proposed in Skegness. Councillor Kirk, please.
Yeah, just very quickly, Mr. Mayor, regarding the rents, council's already said that they've empowered the town clerk to do whatever is necessary to recover those rents. So whilst it's not a favourable position, I think we can sit comfortably knowing that the clerk is working to achieve that. So that's all we need to do on that one. Regarding the cafe, several comments have been made to me about people not knowing the cafe is open until you actually get right up to the cafe on occasions when the weather's not particularly nice and things aren't being stacked out. So maybe it could be worth just, in the new year, just reviewing how the cafe looks from across the park. Any point of sale we may want to have manufactured to actually show that we're open and what sort of things. There are people on this council who run a similar sort of business, so they have a wealth of expertise, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind sharing it with us. So that's a positive. All have been moved, but can I just make a recommendation on this? I assume those moved and seconded recommendations have done as written. Well, one of the things is to identify any other matters that should be sent to council. But I think I would like the council to be writing to East Lindsey District Council and saying, what are you doing to help our residents when they can't get on the internet? They can't just keep knocking on our door. That's an unacceptable situation. They have a duty to the residents of East Lindsey, and that includes our residents in Skegness. And if they are not able to access the services on the internet, what are they meant to do now the town hall doors are bolted shut? So I'll be writing to East Lindsey. So that is what I'd like to add, if the proposer and secretary don't mind, that we ask council to send that letter and get some explanation of how it's going to work in the future, because this unfortunately could be with us for some time, and we need to have some answers from the district council.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kirk. Councillor Mark Anderson, you as a proposer, can you come back on that one?
Yes, I'm happy to take that on, Mr. Mayor. I think that is a really good idea, and I think, thank goodness that Councillor Kirk spotted that. I think it's appalling that our residents, if they don't have the use of a smartphone or computer, and a lot of elderly people don't, or people in the middle age don't, they're not IT literate. Okay, they cannot get in contact with the district council. If we can use it as a place of contact, then some of the COVID grant could be used for computer, for Zoom, like we use now to the district council. But the district council, as what Councillor Kirk says, has got money from government to use. They can't keep it to themselves. We need to maybe ask to actually, so we can use some of this money for the behalf of our residents, like also the free school meals that I've said as well, Mr. Mayor, and I'm hoping Councillor Kirk or Councillor Brooks will agree with that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Councillor Danny Brooks, I think
Mayor, can I
second it. Sorry, Town Clerk, yeah.
I was just going to come back on a couple of those points. I did have a conversation with a senior officer within East Lindsey about the town hall being shut and those very points. If they're coming to us and saying we don't have a phone, we don't have access to the internet, what do we do? And I'm afraid the response I got was, well, that's the service we're offering. I think it's recognised that a small proportion of the population are in that situation. There doesn't appear to be a strategy to address that at all, which is very disappointing. So that was on the car park issue that was raised. Obviously, we have to follow. There is a due process on that, and I will be keeping an eye to see when East Lindsey are going to change, or review their pricing. The other things we have to go on that, otherwise it would cost a lot of money to change it. And kiosks, again, we have to follow due process, and I am doing that following council's previous decision on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks, I think you seconded it. Would you like to come back?
Councillor Brooks, you're still muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm quite happy to go with that. Just a quick question for the clerk. A resident has contacted me a few times saying that the CAF lights have been left on all night. I think it was one night this week. I got an email from them, and then I think last week as well. I just wondered if there was on a timer or if it was just an accident.
I doubt that they've been left on all night. I think what's probably happened, if it's been, they're on sensors, so they're on for a period of time after the last person leaves. But if it's been on a night when there's been a council meeting and the deputy town clerk or somebody else has been in the building on that evening, then the lights would stay on later than normal. But they are an auto shutdown, so after a period of time after the last person leaves, they should go off. So I mean, we can check. I can occasionally check CCTV to make sure that that's happening. I think there was one occasion when the hall lights were left on, which are on switches rather than sensors.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it's been proposed and seconded. So all in favour, please raise your virtual hands.
Clear this up. Is Councillor Brooks actually seconding about the food as well? Can I just ask you that through you, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, I'm seconding that as well.
Okay, thank you. So
Thank you.
Been proposed and seconded. All in favour, please raise your virtual hands. It's carried. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 5, draft budget 2021 to 2022 report and appendices attached to consider various budget options and their risks and to decide how to proceed. Councillor Kirk, please. No, town clerk.
I apologise, my hand was up from last time, Mr. Mayor.
That's fine, councillor.
Okay, well, you have, at the last meeting, you asked me to go away and bring back some options, which is what I've done. I need to remind council that you have a legal duty to produce a balanced budget, and that means your income and expenditure has to balance out. Of course, you can pay for one-off things, so a major repair or an unexpected event. You can pay for those out of reserves, but there is an expectation that reserves, the general reserve certainly, will be maintained at a minimum level. Now, that minimum level for Skegness, based on the current budget, is somewhere between 175,000 at the minimum. The recommended level is from 3 months to 12 months expenditure. 12 months would be moving up towards £700,000. So that would be the level of reserve that a council should be carrying, somewhere in that region. Now, this council has operated at the lower level of those figures because it's got a robust risk management process in place, which means that you're identifying risks that might occur and then providing for them within the earmark reserves. So, for example, property maintenance, replacement of vehicles, all of those sorts of things, which would be risk to the council. You've got earmark reserves for those. So that means that the general reserve can be at the lower end of what's required. So you've got 4 options in front of you, and they run those that have the lowest risk to the council have the highest requirement on the precept, and vice versa, those with the lowest precept request have the highest risk. And in options 1 to 4 in the papers, I've set out what those situations are. So we know what the option 1 is. That is the budget as it was last time. I've adjusted a couple of figures, taken a couple of figures out. For instance, the NDP out of reserves, because that's where it should have come from. That was a mistake last time. But equally, I've made sure that the reserve level is at the minimum level. So that's the lowest risk level. Option 2 was taking your suggestion from last time that the cemetery reserve is effectively closed, then the money from that is moved into the general reserves, and therefore not having to be re-supplemented from that. Option 3 starts to take on some additional risks. So this is where I've taken a leaner view in terms of the any future pay award. Similarly, I've removed the increase that I anticipated in national insurance and pension contributions, which I think because the government will start to pull back some of the money that it's borrowed. The election costs be met from earmark reserves, but of course that means that the future election costs in a couple of years' time, there won't be the earmark reserves there to pay for it. So you'll have to pay that back. It'll either have to be part of that year's budget, or you'll have to rebuild that reserve at some point. And one-off costs such as the parking machine come out of earmark reserves, and also reduce some of the charges that are used to replenish the earmark reserves when they're used for things like one-off emergency costs or replacements. Option 4 takes that to the next stage, which is really removing any contribution to the earmark reserve. So that means you are simply depleting them this year. Obviously, you can't do that forever. And so to get them back into the same position as they are currently in 2 years' time will cost twice as much as it does now. So effectively, the precept will have to go up even more to recover from that position. My concern with artificially reducing the precept by use of reserves is that we get capped. If you're capped, that means you can't raise your precept above a certain amount. If that certain amount doesn't allow you to replenish your reserves, we get to a point where we can't buy a new vehicle. We can't deal with an emergency situation. And then you're into cutting services at that point. So there aren't easy options. I know that a few councillors at the last meeting were mentioning a figure of 5% as being the figure that they'd like to get to. Even with the highest risk option here, you would still need to save another £31,200 or £31,150 to get to a balanced budget with that level of risk. So in order to present an option that does that, I've pulled out some of the areas where you may be able to save costs, where it doesn't have an additional cost to it. So some cost savings have an initial upfront cost, and typically they're redundancy costs. So those are the things that are there in front of you. I know that there's no easy decisions. You're not setting the budget tonight. We're trying to get to a position where next time we look at the budget, I can start to bring back in the future costs of things that you'd like to do in your business plan. So that probably won't be next year. These are going to be business plan items beyond next year. But there are some costs there which I need to bring back to show you so that you can see what the implications are over that 4 or 5 year period. Finally, I've included a table that shows what the earmark reserves are for. I'm aware that due to limitations in space on the accounting system, sometimes those titles have not been great. So things like the Tower Gardens Development Fund, it was a development fund when we were in the process of leading up to transfer of Tower Gardens, developing the new pavilion. That reserve now is there for the emergencies, and emergency expenditure might be needed in terms of maintaining the building and the gardens, and dealing with one-off issues, and also saving for future repairs and maintenance. You'll see it's diminished between last year and where it is now. That's because there has been expenditure this year that wasn't budgeted for in the and has been funded out of those reserves. Some of that was capital spend that was agreed at the beginning of the year. So I can take any questions on any of the figures that are there. To say, there's not an easy decision.
Councillor Anderson, please.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the clerk and his report. I read it with interest this afternoon. There is no easy options, Mr. Mayor, as you can see when reading the papers. The cupboard is bare, basically, for us as town council, unless we really want to hurt our residents. If we go, and most of us want to actually go no more than the rate of inflation of 5%, at the end of the day, we're going to hit our residents by, cutting the services that we provide for them. And if we go through the various options, it's quite clear how much hurt are we going to give or imply on the residents on some of the things that we deliver in services, or even let some people go, which will have add-on costs as well. If you take things in the right perspective, and at the end of the day, we are a low-level precept that for the service levels that we give, and I think we give good services to our residents in Skegness for the services we do provide, and I'm proud of that. I'm not proud at Lincolnshire County Council or East Lindsey, but I'm proud of the services that we give for our local residents here in Skegness. I pay, as a Band E property, I paid something in the region of nearly £1,500 to Lincolnshire County Council, and I don't believe I get a good service from them. I really don't. And East Lindsey, I pay probably about £150. And the police authority, well, I won't even comment on that because you can never get the police when you want them. But for us, I think we actually provide a really good service for what we actually charge. And if you look at the options on option 1, the costs relating to it, I've done a breakdown. Band A will cost an extra £1.46p per week on a Band A property on option 1. B will be £1.70 per week extra. C will be £1.90, and Band D will be £2.19. That's not hurting our residents. That means we can move forward. That means we can have money in our reserves without touching it to do the things we want to. And also, I believe with the running of this pandemic, as what Councillor Brooks has said, we need to look after our residents, because nobody else is going to look after them, because we actually care, and we should care about our residents. So there are hard things to grasp here. I don't like paying out extra money. A lot of our residents are on the tipping point as well. But when you put things in the right perspective on option one, okay, it's a small amount of money, but sometimes it's a large amount to people. But when you talk about percentage wise, and to me, maintaining our service levels and expanding our service levels, like not on the agenda tonight, is I hear that we've got or we're in the frame to get some money from the town plans, and part of our bid is a tower gardens, and we'll need money for that, because there'll be revenue consequences to develop the things that we put in for that master plan that we put in, and other things. So there are hard decisions to make, and I just wanted to say that now, Mr. Mayor, before we come to a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adrian Finlay.
Yeah, good evening all. Yeah, I've looked at it myself, and I agree with Councillor Anderson in a way regarding the services. I think the services that we provide are pretty good and probably could be improved, and you need money to do that. But looking at these four options, for me, it just seems like we've looked at cutting things rather than reducing things. I mean, this is all about cutting services to me on all four options. There's not really a lot of mention about trying to save on costs, and that to me just seems, you know, maybe we should be looking at other ways rather than hitting them with the services. We should be looking really at how much money we're spending, and maybe we should be drawing back, you know, a few quid here and there to save money that way, rather than cutting the services. That's just how I've seen it anyway. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it just looks like we're cutting services and that's it, to save money rather than cutting back on costs. You know, you look through the budget sheet, there's a lot of money being spent elsewhere. And I know many of you have got different ideas of how we spend the money, and maybe there's better options. But for me, it just seems like we shouldn't be cutting services. We should be trying to save money elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richard Cunnington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time this week on this budget. I've looked at many different options, and I've had a couple of conversations with our town clerk, who's been very helpful and given me information I need to make some sort of decision and help me move forward. I've got a few issues. Number one, I would like us to look really, again, it's similar to what Councillor Finlay just said about looking at reducing costs of things. We've got the photocopier. I'd like us to see if we can get a better deal with that. We're paying for that yearly, and I think what we're paying is a large sum of money. I think we should get a better deal, even if it's buying our own with a service plan. There's one cost I've got concerns about. And I see that no matter where you look, no matter what you look at, our expenditure is in the region of 700,000 a year. There's a lot of money there, and obviously a lot of that is employee costs. The only way I can see getting around this is looking at more efficient ways of working, and people do this, operating in different ways. And again, we've got the grass cutting. To me, that's a big cost, what we've got there, cutting the grass verges, for the small amount we get from county council. The ideal scenario would be a bigger chunk of the pie from everybody. We've taken on services. We should have got more money from the LDC and county for doing this work. But we have got an option. We could look to contract that work out. I know it means redundancies, but if we look for tenders for contracting that work out, we may find we'll be able to save money there and still provide the same service as what we provide now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Edgington.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just a question to the clerk. When we started this discussion on previous meetings, it was suggested by one of the colleagues that as it says in this report here, to the £60,000 into the the cemetery reserve and put into the general reserve. And of course, that sum of money was set aside to purchase land in order to presumably in order to accommodate traditional burial plots. And what I would like to know, if you have the information to hand, is are more people opting for cremation rather than traditional burial? Because if that is the case, I mean, if you go to the cemetery, there are small plots in which the urns can be laid to rest and so forth. And if that's the case, then the requirement for a more traditional area for traditional burials would not be as great as it currently is. But then I don't know that information. I mean, is that information, do we hold that, or do the undertakers hold it? Because I mean, I think it seems that there's more people, families opting for cremation because of, rising costs in terms of, funeral arrangements. And so they're looking at different ways. That's my question to the clerk. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, looking at the list of options, I don't think the right option is there yet. Option 2 is a minimum starting point, removing that money from the cemetery reserve. We don't need it there. We've set a precedent as being a borrowing council. In 35 years' time, when we need the cemetery, when Skegness Town needs a cemetery extension, it can borrow again to fund it. So I see no point in doing that. But I think quite right. I still think there is some fat to be skimmed off this budget. I really do. I think there's areas of expenditure there that I think are excessive. And I think I tend to agree with Councillor Cunningham. Whilst I wouldn't suggest a council that looks along the lines of finding a contract to do our grass cutting, because those on the council who've been on the council a bit longer will remember what happened last time we went out to tender for that. That is why we do it in-house, because the tenders was not great price-wise, and the standard of the work was nowhere near as good as the work that our staff team do. So that's why we don't do that. But I still think there's areas we can trim down. I'm not happy just to say, no, we can't do it. I think we need to try our best. I think, yes, we should look at staffing. We shouldn't be frightened of doing that. We have an excellent staff team who work very, very hard, but we need to be open and transparent in everything we do. And that means looking at our staffing, looking at our staffing costs, looking at what we're actually spending all our money on, because it's not our money. It's never been our money. It's a residents of Skegness money, and we need to make that money work as hard for them as we possibly can. So yeah, there are some things out there that we may want to look at. We may want to decide, for example, that community grants aren't something we want to do in future. I know it's not a huge sum of money, it's a few £1,000s, but if we start getting a few of those few £1,000s together, all of a sudden we've saved £50,000 or £60,000. So I think I appreciate the excellent work the town clerk has done, but I just still don't think it's going quite far enough. I still think there are savings to be made. This is a hard year for everybody, so I appreciate it's going to be a hard year for the council as well.
Okay, thank you. I just want to comment on that while I remember. We did have every intention of bringing this back in-house, this grass cutting, and the team are doing a fantastic job. And I've seen issues and raised them, and they've been dealt with quickly. If we tender this out, it goes through office after office after office, and we never deal with it for the residents. So we need it in-house. We must be mindful of that. We have got a great grass cutting team are doing an exceptional job, fantastic. There was out yesterday down Borough Road doing amazing work. Councillor Saxon. Councillor Saxon, please.
Yeah,
Sorry, Councillor Saxon, can you try and turn in your video off? We can't hear you. Your internet's breaking up. If you can turn your video off, it might help you.
Now.
That's it. That might help you.
Thank you. Yeah, the question, this £130,000 for tower development, that's a lot of money. We shouldn't spend in May. This COVID now, situation in the country, and we could live it out there.
We've got a bad connection, Councillor Saxon. We can't hear a word of it. It's breaking up.
Well,
Your internet's running slow. Have you got anything else on?
It's on it, and it's showing that I'm online.
Right, we can hear you now. Well, can't now.
You mean, can you?
Yeah, can now.
Right, repeat again then. The Tower Gardens development, £130,000. I mean, that's a lot of money just to sit there for any development. We've done a lot to that, to the Tower Gardens. Shouldn't be doing any more for a couple of years. We could, you know, to leave 30,000 in would be nice. It'll cover bits and bobs that do need dressing. But 130,000, come on.
Mayor, is it a useful point? I know that other people who want to ask questions, but I'm just wary of missing some of them as we go through it. So it might be worth answering some of those issues.
Okay, yeah, we've got two councillors. We've got Councillor Councillor Danny Brooks after. So if you'd like to come back in, Town Clerk, I thought you was going to speed things up by doing it at the end, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's just there's quite a range of issues there. Somebody's
Just
got
need to turn the microphone of Councillor Saxon off now, please, Town Clerk. Thank you.
Right. Reducing costs. What council has got to remember, certainly in terms of the office costs, is that you have basically doubled our workload, more than doubled the amount of stuff that we do. And these are the same sorts of costs that we've had in previous years. Yes, some have gone up slightly. Like the photocopier, we do a heck of a lot of printing. We print out lots of agendas, etc., etc. The costs that you're seeing is for everything. So that's maintenance, toner cartridges, everything in there. And we went through a tendering procedure for it to get the lowest cost. So, and we're still in contract. So there's no short-term answer for those sorts of things. Many of these things I've gone through time and time and time again. Now, I know that there are some new costs that relate to the building where we haven't yet got those initial tenders and quotes and things in. But if we don't provide sufficient money to actually do the job, then things are going to go badly wrong. And we'll end up with, maintenance not being done. We'll end up with, I'll come to the comment on Tower Gardens, which isn't 130, it's 96,000, because we've spent 34,000 this year as per the budget. You can see that in last year's budget, the 34,000 was coming out there. Say, for instance, we have to drain the pond, which we will have to do to remove the silt. We're looking at having all sorts in cranes to lift the pumps, pumping. You're talking about many, many thousands of pounds to do that piece of work. That is going to be coming up within the next couple of years. Otherwise, you're going to have dead fish and all of the rest of it. These assets that have been taken on have costs associated with them. We've tried to minimize the impact in the office costs. There's not been a huge increase in the office costs over the years. And in fact, if you look at the establishment list, the town council employs 13.6 people. So that's not a huge number when you consider the amount of things that we now do. We cut 300,000 square meters of grass. We look after cemetery, we look after the closed burial yards. We've got Tower Gardens, we've got Beresford Field, we've got public footpaths that we now we look after as well. We've got 3 playgrounds which have costs associated. We have got to carry out administration in a way which is compliant with the regulations. And I know this isn't the way that many of you would run your business, I know that, but we have to comply with those regulations. You haven't got a choice, you've got to do it. So we've got to have in place the types of system and recording mechanisms to do that. If you just think about the times that we're producing risk assessments and all of this type of thing. All of that takes time, effort, and money. So we've been cutting costs. You've been telling me to sharpen my pencil for the last 4 or 5 years, and I've successfully done that and managed to cut costs. What I'm saying to you now is the pencil can't be sharpened anymore. If you want to, council can decide to take money out of reserves. Would I do that as your responsible finance officer? Would I recommend you do that? No, I certainly wouldn't, because I know in 3 years' time, 2 years' time, 4 years' time, you're going to hit a problem and you won't have the money to resolve. So, at the end of the day, it's your decision to make. It's not my decision to make. But what I'm saying is, you risk not having enough money in the future if you start taking money out of reserves. Are we going to be able to cut costs? Well, the only way really realistically to cut costs is to cut services. So if you don't want to cut the grass anymore, if you want to stop doing that, then there would be a cost saving. We'd have to give back the £10,000 we get from county, and they would have to sort out some other mechanism for doing it, but that would save you the cost of that. But then the grass would grow because county aren't going to do it. These are the tough decisions that district and county have faced in the last few years, and they've had to make some decisions that have been unpopular, but they were capped. So you have got the choice of either saying we cut the services, which is one option, or you could raise the precepts. And in monetary terms, I'm just coming back to a point that Councillor Anderson made at the beginning. He was talking about the cost of services being £1 something a week for a band-aid. Or the cost of the increase. That isn't true. The cost of the increase is £18 a year for option 1, which is the most expensive. £18 a year, and that's not not a pound. That's a 30p a week, something like that. Option 2, taking the cemetery money out. As I said, if your decision is you don't want a cemetery fund, and you could decide in 30 years' time to borrow the money to do that. The pavilion would have been will be well towards being paid off by that time, and the money will be cost, but obviously land prices will be higher. Answering Councillor Edgington's question about burial plots, for 9 years we've had fairly consistent figures. This year there's been a dip. I suspect it's as a result of I don't know what it's going to be like next year. I don't know whether that trend has now changed permanently and there are fewer burials, or whether we'll go back to that normal situation in a year or two's time when the effects of the pandemic are over. These aren't, there aren't easy questions, but I do think that finding 10p here and 10p there in terms of savings, and that's all that you're going to be able to do, is going to nowhere near give you sufficient money to get down to a 5% increase. That's got to be proper service cuts.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just think we've spent 34,000 from the Tower Gardens Development Fund last year, yet we've still got 96,000 in there. If we spend 34,000 this year on it, I think we could trim a little bit out of that, is my personal view. The cemeteries, I think the clerk said last year that the 60,000 cemetery extension money, we have got enough spaces, even at normal burials, to last us for 30 years. I can't see that changing. I can't see it going up. I can see it going down with when people go to be cremated rather than buried. So I believe we didn't take it out of the reserves last year because of a rates issue, which I'm assuming has been sorted out. Councillor Anderson saying that 30% increase for our residents just to run the council. I mean, that's going to be 30% this year. It's got to be 30% next year, because all these running costs we've got here, £750,000 to run this council. You're never going to earn, we're never going to earn that much. We need to either increase, it's as simple as this, we need to either increase the earnings or cut the costs. That's the only thing we can do. You know, I just think that, okay, the clerk's worried about being capped. The government cap councils when they are running at 30% increases all the time. The residents are suffering it. The clerk said earlier, he's got people coming in the cafe scratching about with pennies to buy a cup of coffee. Can them people afford the £2 that Councillor Anderson was talking about? They're scratching about to buy a cup of coffee. And then you're saying, oh, it's only £2 a week. They can't even afford a cup of coffee now. So I think I'm with Councillor Steve Kirk on this one. I think we've got to try and find, I would say with the COVID situation, we need to be looking at maybe possibly a 9% increase. I've gone through my figures and 9% increase is where it should be. We've got to try and increase earnings or cut costs. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Ty.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Totally agree with what's just been said. I would also go with 9%, just keep it under the 10 for our residents. But I would not vote in any way to start using anything we have on reserve. It's on reserve for the reason that it's there as an insurance policy for ourselves to be used when we have an emergency. We do not want to be using any of that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to come back. Can I just concur with Councillor Tony Ty and also Councillor Brooks? Both made impassionate pleas here and good speeches. I do not want to touch reserves, and they shouldn't be touched. And I agree with Councillor Brooks, and I apologise to the town clerk on my monies that I said with the increases. I've done a recalculation. The clerk is absolutely right. On the proposal on option 1, it would be 34p a week. Band B would be 40, Band C would be 46, and Band D would be 51p a week increase on the proposals on option 1. It doesn't sound a lot of money, and I totally agree and know where Councillor Brooks is coming on. Hand on heart here, Mr. Mayor, I do believe, as what Councillor Finlay has said, we do provide excellent services for the money that we actually collect and for our local residents. And we all know that our local residents want us to get more services back because we are delivering good services on their behalf. So I don't want us to be in the position when we are cutting services back. And I think none of us want that. And, you know, at the end of the day, if we can, as what Councillor Brooks has said, if we can get on with income generation and get the money that is owed to us and do that car park and fill those black holes, then the debate we would be having tonight wouldn't be so severe because some of those black holes would be covered. So there are some issues, as Councillor Kirk has said, that we could actually go with a sharpened pencil. But at the end of the day, the town clerk is absolutely right. You're getting to the end of the pencil. There's nowhere to sharpen anymore. And yeah, we've got to make a tough decision. Okay, whether we move forward, step back, or move sideways. I suggest we keep on moving forward because we're doing a damn good job for the local residents. I don't get complaints about the services we deliver. My complaints that I get as a local councillor is about services that East Lindsey run. We've heard about tonight. They don't even offer a service for vulnerable people. If you've got no IT connection, the office is closed, but we're paying for that service. And like all of us know about Lincolnshire County Council, the lights are turned off, yet we're paying for it to be turned on, but we're paying for it and they're turned off. But we provide good services for what we deliver. And you know where I'm coming from, and I'll stop there for now. But I don't think there's more that we can cut without hurting our residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Struggling with my IT a bit. It won't keep turning on and off. Yeah, I totally take on board what Councillor Anderson has been said. But as the clerk quite rightly said, when the county and the district were faced with a budget that wouldn't balance, they had to cut services. We have a choice. We have a simple choice with our budget setting. We can raise the precept to pretty much whatever we want, whatever we need, sorry, is a better expression. We can raise it to whatever we need without the fear of being capped. To use reserves that we currently have to finance this year's budget is not a great position to be in, because it's only a one-off. What do you do the year after? Because you've spent your reserves. I have always maintained, and I'll maintain it now, there is money that can come out of this budget, but it may mean losing some of the stuff we do. For example, when people are, as many people in this town will be, worried about their jobs or having just lost their jobs, they will rely on the state supporting them. Will they then need our community grants as well? Because looking back, the district council had grants, those district councils remember them, the county council used to have grants, but that was one of the first things they cut when money got tight. So we have some simple choices. Either we go for the 25, 30%, whatever the exact figure was, I can't remember, and balance the budget that way, or we use some of our reserves and artificially bring it down, because that's all we're doing. We're not really bringing it down. We're artificially pretending to bring it down. Or do we go back to our numbers? And I know what the town clerk has said about year after year he's sharpened his pencil, so now he's just got this little stub that he holds in his fingers. Well, I think now's the time for him to start writing with his fingers and get rid of the pencil altogether, because I think there is something to be shaved there. And if, hand on heart, we've gone through that budget and we know there is nothing that can be shaved off it, then we can justify the precept rise. But if we can't say hand on heart we've done that, then I would worry putting in such a large increase in the precept when I would like it much, much lower, and I'd like it as close to 5% as we could possibly get. That may not be achievable, and I take on board what the clerk is saying about it needing some very, very drastic cutting to get down to 5%. But if we have 5% as an aspiration, we might get somewhere close. That's a decision for this council to make. Does it raise the precept where it needs and take the flak that will go with it? Because people will use it politically. It will be in the papers. 25% rise all over Facebook. Useless bunch of councillors, 25%. Yeah, I don't see them giving up their allowances. Blah, de, blah, de, blah, de, blah. That's the hardest decision you've got to make. Are you prepared to ride that out because you know you're doing it for the town, or would you like to cut it? I would like to see some more savings if we can make them, but I'm quite happy to vote with whatever the council agrees, because I'm totally with Councillor Anderson on this. What the council does is provide some fantastic services, far cheaper and far better than any other council has tried to deliver them in the book. Better than with counting its grass cutting, better with the district council maintain the tower gardens. We could go on and on and on. We provide damn good services for the money, but I'm just conscious it's not our money, it's our residents' money.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Yeah, I do think we give excellent value for money. Councillors will remember a number of years ago that we fought tooth and nail to bring grass cutting. We fought to be in this position where we can deliver a good service. Mr. Mayor, you'll remember, Danny, you'll remember, we fought tooth and nail to get in, and we've done an excellent job. Bear in mind, with the recorded vote last year, we cut the budget by 5%. I didn't want to do that. That 5% added on to what we're doing now, it wouldn't be 30%, it'd be 25%, but we're 5% more. In fact, we're probably 10% more, because that's probably doubled over the last year. So, we bit our own bums with that one, really. but we do give an excellent service. And when we come to people scratching for pennies and halfpennies down in a cafe, you know, a lot of those people won't even be paying council tax. They'll be out of that, you know, they'll be covered by the benefit system. I think it's a very difficult position as a council to be in. It's a very difficult position where we're going to cut the Christmas lights, not do the grass cutting and all the contractual things that's involved. And I don't know whether residents would thank us for that. And it's all right, they can get it on Facebook and they can say what they like, you know, but, you know, if you want a service, you've got to pay for it. If you want to make a car run, you've got to pay for it. Totally agree with Councillor Ty. We don't want to be touching them reserves because one day it's a one-off. We took £35,000 out of it last year. It hasn't been put back. We took £65,000 out of the cemetery fund. It'll not get put back. All the time, you're diminishing. All the time, you're just putting it off. Councillor Kirk absolutely on the button said, we're falsifying what we're doing. We're cheating our residents because we're saying to them, we're going to cut your costs this year, but we're actually not, because next year it's going to bite us back because we've cut that cost, but we've taken their money out of their reserves to cut their costs. You know, it is a catch-22 situation. But at the end of the day, I can't vote to cut services. I can't vote for something we fought so hard to get, and we are doing the grass cutting better. Mr. Mayor, you know, you said about Borough Road. What a pig's ear that used to be when we had contractors doing it. It was all over the place. It was dreadful. You know, and what we offer, the grass cutting, the Christmas lights, the Tower Gardens, is an asset to our town and to our residents. You know, and let's just put things into perspective. We have lost quite a bit of money this year with COVID, with the car park, with the cafe, with the kiosks. You know, that will get sorted out. There'll be more money in the coffers next year. It's hit everybody this COVID, you know. So let's be very, very careful about, but I couldn't possibly vote for something around 5%. It just isn't going to work. It just physically isn't going to work. And you need to get your eggs on, because otherwise we're going to come to the end of this little council of ours and we're going to be halfway up the river without a paddle. And we don't want to be cutting services. We've got a good team, as the town clerk alluded. You know, our office staff are doing 4 times more work now. They certainly aren't 4 times more money. So please, you know, I think we need to have a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Definitely the grass cutting is far superior, Lincoln Road included. I've still got people with their hands up, but I don't think they put them down from last time. So if you'd like to just look at your hands, see if they're raised for a reason, or take them off so I can move forward. It'd be great. And just a quick, just on the back of Councillor Dennis, unless I've missed something with the internet connection, I haven't heard anybody mention a 5%. I've heard some 9s and 8s, but so I think we're all singing that, you know, we don't want to start losing these services for 5%. So hopefully I've heard correctly. Councillor Kirk, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just for clarification, whilst I don't believe we should use reserves to artificially lower the precept, I still stand by what I said earlier about I don't think we need a cemetery extension reserve. So I would close that and move it all into the general fund to make our general reserve far healthier than it is at the moment. We're running along the bottom on this. That is where we'll get bitten in the backside if that gets too low. An unexpected expense comes up, a huge gale rips through Tower Gardens and uproots all the trees, and we have to deal with that. That's £100,000 gone. You know, that's why we have a general reserve. We can move money from the general reserve to for any major unplanned expenditure, so it gives us some security. So my proposal was that cemetery extension reserve went, so it no longer is a budget heading, but that money was moved into general reserve, not used to drag down artificially the rate of the precept.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it wouldn't click on. I totally agree with Councillor Steve Kirk. I mean, we say that if you get rid of the cemetery extension reserve, when we go to buy land in 30 years' time, we won't have that money in there, which is correct. But can anybody tell me how much that money will be worth in 30 years' time? Now, if we'd bought land at £60,000 today, I wouldn't have a problem with buying the land today and having the 60,000 invested in land, which will go up. This money that's in this reserve will not go up hardly at anything. So when you get to buying land in 30 years' time, that 60,000 will be worth about 100 quid, or maybe not that low, but it will not be worth £60,000. Now, I would sooner that go into something. If we bought land, or if there's land to buy, I would use that now to buy the land rather than keeping it in a low interest account. So I quite agree. If we're not going to need that money for 30 years, I think it's wasted in the cemetery extension. I think it needs to go into general reserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before I bring Councillor Anderson, can I just remind you all, what we don't need to do is keep going round in circles. We've all showed our concerns, but let's not keep going over the same thing, because we need to move forward with this and find a solution. So Councillor Anderson, please.
Can I just concur with Councillor Kirk and Councillor Brooks? I too actually believe that cemetery extension money only needs to go into general reserves to bump it up. And if we need to, as what has been said by Councillor Brooks and Councillor Kirk, in years to come, we can actually get some borrowing. We've done that now, so we can get some borrowing approvals to buy land. And Councillor Brooks is absolutely right. If we bought the land now, it probably will be worth more than leaving the money in a low interest account. My view, Mr. Mayor, for what it's worth, okay, is I'm hovering, okay, over option 1 and 2 for what it's worth. I do believe I cannot, hand on heart, hit the services, okay, that we do give on behalf of our residents in Skegness. Yes, there are some issues that probably we can look at, and I totally agree about the grants that we give. Not many organisations are operating at this present time, so there's money to be saved there. There are some few items that, or few £1,000s we can save from pockets here and there. But I do believe I am hovering between option 1 and option 2 to preserve the services for all our residents in Skegness, because we actually provide good services. And that's why we've got gold quality town status, because we actually do good services for the money that we collect on behalf of the residents of Skegness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? We'll come up with a solution. I'll put something forward. Councillor Cunnington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you for letting me back as well. I see in the budget, and this is totally different, and I'm just wondering, asking for an explanation really and some advice. We've got a transfer into general reserves, and I think off the top of my head, because it's on my computer, it's £68,000. Again, I'm like a lot of the other councillors, we need to keep reserves. Reserves are there for one-offs. We have it a one-off this year. That's fine. But if we leave the money we've got in the reserves we've got, or move the reserve we've got around so they're still in reserves, do we actually physically need to put money into reserves this year? I know it's building the pot, but can that not wait till next year to start building them back up again to save that? I mean, I think it's 68,000. That's a lot of money that we're putting into a reserve pot. If we can wait until next year to cover some of the COVID situation with that, or am I looking at a wrong figure somewhere? Thank you.
Mayor, I can answer that, which is that's to get the minimum level that the external auditors would expect our general reserve to sit at, which is 3 months expenditure.
Thank you. Can I just ask the town clerk just quickly? Got the papers mixed up a little bit here on the desk with the agenda. Option 2, if you could just, what sort of percentage, because everybody's talking in percentages, what is option 2 coming out that percentage wise, please?
Option 2 percentage wise comes out at 18.64%.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Have you got Councillor Brooks with his hand up, Councillor Anderson with his hand up, and Cunnington with his hand up still? No,
Sorry,
hands up
Mr.
now.
Mayor, I left it up from before.
That's fine. Anybody else wishing to speak on this? Or make any recommendations on where we go forward? Because we have to find a way forward during these difficult times. Councillor Anderson?
Okay, I'll make I'll go for option 2. Okay, with savings. Okay, taking or look at further savings on behalf of council if possible.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Cunnington?
No, it's another question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, if you don't mind. I understand the clerk's answer to my last question about the moving the money to make it where it needs to be for the reserves. But if we're going to move the money from cemetery reserves into general reserves, surely those two figures actually outweigh each other. Thank you.
Town clerk?
Well, that's exactly correct in option 2, which is why the preset percentage in that option is lower than in option 1. So in option 1, the 68,000 is effectively coming from the preset. In option 2, that is coming from the cemetery reserve. So that's exactly right. You're saying it does cancel it out in that option, but it obviously leaves the other cost pressures or income pressures that have been identified.
Councillor Kirk, please.
Can I just thank the mayor, thank the clerk there, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cunnington. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. That's the point I made earlier about having to decide where we want to be, because if we want to be in the best possible position for this council, and I would argue therefore possibly the best possible position for our residents, we should be going with option 1 and moving the 60,000 in, because going to option 2 and moving the 60,000 in and not taking it as a preset still leaves us at the bare minimum of where we want to be, rather than actually building some buffer in. This is an opportunity. If we are going to raise the precept by 18 point whatever the clerk said, which is another £16.22, the difference between that and option 1 is £10 a year, isn't it, Mr. Clark? And my figures correct, less than £1 a month. So let's either do the job properly or make some real savings. Let's not just move money around and pretend we're making savings.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to comment?
Can I have some clarification regarding what Councillor Kirk said from the town clerk?
Yeah,
I think that that needs an explanation because I'm misunderstanding that when I said option 2. Thank you.
Councillor Kirk.
Do you want me to?
Did ask the town clerk to respond.
Sorry,
so I'll let
town clerk. I've got
my understanding of what Councillor Kirk was saying is to put money into the reserves, not only from the preset, but also from the cemetery reserve. So that would effectively put more money into the reserves for next year, whilst increasing the preset. So that's a sort of even lower risk option than the low risk option that I presented.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what you're actually saying is now, Councillor Kirk, you're saying is if we're going to go for it, we're going to go for option 1. And we're going to also going to transfer the cemetery fund into general reserves. Which, listening to people, especially what Councillor Brooks said, when he said, and I totally agree with him, £65,000 now, put in some land, yes, £65,000 as money isn't any good at all, and I agree with that. So are we saying, is somebody proposing, are you proposing, Councillor Anderson, that we go for broke and you go for option one? Because if you're going to go for option one, I'm happy to second that.
Can I come in, Mr. Mayor, please?
Yes, please do, because we need to resolve this. We've got to move forward with this. Please do.
Yeah, I'm happy enough to go for option one on the understanding that the £65,000 that are earmarked in burial reserves, okay, goes into that option to offset the precept. Is that my understanding that Councillor Kirk was up? I'm asking the same question as Councillor
Can I
Dennis.
just clarify exactly what I was saying, please, Mr. Mayor?
Please do.
I was saying another option would be to go with option one, which is a relatively low risk, but still leaving our general reserves at a bare minimum. But in addition to that, what makes this option slightly different to the option one you have in front of you is I'm suggesting one could also close the cemetery earmark reserve and move that into there. So rather than standing as a town clerk, if I quickly go through my sheets, would leave it standing at 177, it would stand at 237.
If you're making that proposal, Councillor Kirk, I'm happy.
And I'm saying it's another option that I want to put forward. So we've got
yes,
absolutely
I'm happy
covered.
I'm happy enough to support you if you're making that an option.
But I'd only make that as an option if we still try to see where we can find some savings in our budget, because that's the problem. The problem is we're spending more than we're earning. It's as simple as that. If we can find some savings, I don't care how much they are, but they are savings that will mount up year on year.
Totally agree with you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I shan't be voting on a 30% increase. Putting money into a rainy day fund, yes, we're at bare minimum. I think most businesses and most people are on a bare minimum at present. We're in the middle of a global pandemic and we're saying, well, actually, let's put some money away for a rainy day. I've looked out the window in my businesses and it's pouring it down. It's pouring it down. We're in the middle of a unprecedented, never happened before rainy day. And here we are saying, well, actually, our residents can afford a little bit more. Let's squeeze them a bit more. There could be redundancies. We don't know how this is going to pan out. There could be more redundancies. We're seeing all our customers getting locked down into tier 3. Do you think Skegness is going to survive if the people from Nottingham, South Yorkshire, Leicester can't come and visit us? No. So we're tightening our belts. We're not actually going, well, actually, let me stick some more money into the savings fund. So putting money into the reserves, we're on bare minimum, but so is everybody right now. We are in a global pandemic. We're sat here going, yeah, the residents can afford this, the residents can afford that. We're doing great jobs. We are doing a great job, but we need to tighten our belt. I shan't be voting for a 30% increase and putting money away for a rainy day when it's pouring it down outside. I'd be buying an umbrella. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Tony Ty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't see that I could vote for a 30% rise. I don't think so. Not at this stage. I personally would go for the medium risk option, which is 18% in real terms. What is that, Town Clerk, please?
In real terms, it's 18%, Tony.
18.64%. Which I do believe is roughly an increase of 20 pence a week.
Yep.
Am I right, Town Clerk?
Yes, 20 pence a week for a band A. The medium risk band A, it's an increase of £10.87 a year. For a band B, £12.61. For a band C, £14.41, and for a band D, £16.22. Most of the properties in Skegness fall into bands A, B, and C. There's relatively few in band D.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, can those of you that have spoken and don't wish to speak again, can you please lower your hands? Everybody's still got their hands up. Councillor Anderson, please.
Yeah, Thank you. Can I just come back regarding what Councillor Brooks is saying? I will not be voting for a 30% increase. What we're trying to achieve is something in the region, or what I suggested, something in the region tops about 18 or 19% increase, which is option 2. My understanding was, okay, maybe I'm being thick, but my understanding was if we put the money that is earmarked, okay, the 60-odd thousand pounds that earmarked in the cemetery burial into the general funds, okay, that would actually offset the ideas on option 1 in protecting the services, okay? But in real terms, it drops the precept down to 18%, right? Also, we're looking at what other councillors are, taking out the community grants because of COVID, nothing's happening, and asking the town clerk to look at other savings to bring the precept down as well. That's where I'm coming from, and I totally get it from other councillors about, and especially Councillor Brooks. He's absolutely right in what he's saying. We've got to make it affordable, but we've got to also protect the services, because people are relying on those services that we're giving, because they're not going to get it from anywhere else. They're not going to get it from Lincolnshire County Council. They're not going to get it from East Lindsey. They'll be looking to us to provide those services for our local residents.
Thank you. Councillor Kirk.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, just to put Councillor Brooks's mind at rest, I said that was another option. I didn't say it was an option I would support. I just said it was another option of way we could use that money to go to general reserve rather than just offset the precept. As I said right from the very beginning, I think option 2 is our bare minimum, but I'd still want to see savings, which is pretty much what Councillor Anderson has just said. There is money in this budget that can still come out of it, and option 2 is a bare minimum. I said right at the beginning, and I'd make no bones about it, this isn't our money, it's their money, and if we can save it, that's money we don't need to spend. That doesn't mean we have to cut services. There's other stuff we can reduce from that budget that we don't actually use or we don't actually need. So I haven't changed my viewpoint. I just thought it was another option to put on the table that people may want to consider. And if having considered it, they find it totally unacceptable, that's absolutely fantastic. But, you know, it's right that we have all options in front of us.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't agree more with what my dad said, really. I think this is, you know, times that have never been seen before. And much like Councillor Kirk said, the savings still need to be made. And I think I remember the clerk saying that, you know, there is savings to be made, but there may be 10 pence here and 10 pence there. Well, 10 pences makes a pound. So I'd really like to see, you know, the 10 pence. I want to see the savings, because I believe that there's still more to go. I couldn't imagine a world where we're charging a 30% increase on our residents. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Adrian Finlay.
Yeah, I'd just like to suggest to the clerk, he's given us the 4 options, which fantastic. He's simplified it. Now, listening to tonight, I think the way that the general feel is there is money to be saved, and I think looking at the figures, there probably is. It's a tough job for the clerk and the deputy clerk and anybody at the office staff to work it out. But we haven't got to actually decide on how we're going to approach this. But I think it's got to be decided, I believe, Steve, by December, is it?
Effectively, the December meeting, I would want all of the figures decided, because if you go into January, the January meeting, when you actually make the decision, we don't want to be having these sorts of discussions there, because a very poor decision will be made on that basis, because you'll have to make a decision legally on that evening, and you can end up making decisions without having all of the information available in terms of implications of those decisions. So the idea is that by the December meeting, you've thrashed out all of the arguments and you've come to an outcome that you can all vote on.
There
Now,
seems to be, sorry, Steve, there seems to be a lot of options tonight. So is it possible you could come back to us for November? Because these meetings do drag out, because obviously the concern both from a finance point of view and from the residents' point of view, you know, us as well, we're all council taxpayers. So is it possible that we can look at a possible another 4 alternative options based on tonight's meeting in November? So we can get a little bit nearer. I mean, there's been some production tonight in my eyes from what's been said, and how people feel. And I'm just wondering if we could have a look at another 4 options in November.
well, I think the starting point appears to be, subject to a vote, the medium risk one, option 2. Sorry, losing my voice now. In terms of bringing back more options, it's very difficult to, you know, I need to know from you. I mean, I've given some options of things that could be cut out. So, for instance, there's some subscription costs, there's the civic events budget, then you get into really cutting services beyond those. Now, but they're going to save you, you know, less than a fifth of a penny per, you know, per resident. That is at that sort of level that those sorts of cuts are. Now, when we get into December, we will then have the tax base. We won't have it until then. The tax base will give us an idea of whether or not there are more or less, fewer properties that are bearing the brunt of the precept. Normally, it increases slightly. I don't know what the whether many new builds have come on this year because of the pandemic, but it may be that's gone up slightly, so that would have the impact of reducing that percentage slightly. By Christmas, we may have gone through more of a process where we've actually got some firm costs for some of the ongoing maintenance. At the moment, we're working purely on estimates. As those firm up, we might be able to say, well, okay, we've saved, you know, £50 here or £100 here. But again, you're talking about fairly small marginal figures, and you know, I doubt that they're going to come to a huge amount by the end of the process. Beyond that, it starts to get very difficult, because a lot of the costs that you see in the budget in things like supplies and services, they're the infrastructure to support the council services, which you're wanting not to cut. If we cut those back, you know, you could say to me tonight, right, we won't have any more agendas on paper at all. Well, okay, that saves on some of our per photocopy printing costs. It will save on some paper costs. You know, so there will be a marginal cost saving on that. But you're down into that sort of level of detail and those sorts of decisions, and I can't imagine that we're going to spend 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 of these type meetings deciding that sort of level. But those are the sorts of savings that you would have to be doing, and they're not going to deliver, you know, a huge amount, to be honest. You're going to be talking about hundreds of pounds, not tens of thousands, and it's the tens of thousands that if you want to get down to anywhere near sort of, well, below 10%, it is tens of thousands of pounds that you need to save. You know, 31,000 represents bringing it down from the lowest precept in this list, which uses all your reserves, down to 5%. So yes, there may be some money to come out of the budget, but what I'm saying is, we always go through this process at this time of the year, by the time we get to the December budget, we will have maximised all of those savings that we can. But it may not be a huge amount that's been saved by that time, because you've got to pay your insurance, you've got to pay your business rates. We don't even know what the business rates are yet. They're running months and months and months behind. I mean, there may be, you know, it could come in lower than the amount that we've budgeted. I don't know. So as I say, we've got costs that you can't get rid of, insurance costs, you know, heating and lighting costs. We're going through the process of, you know, getting the best deals on those energy contracts. We're not there yet, because when we signed up as a new building, we're tied in for a year at those initial rates, and it's not until we've been in for a year that we're able to negotiate lower rates. But we are going through that process. We've got certain systems we have to have in place. We've got cemetery systems and accounting systems and all of these things, so that we can do our statutory returns. We've got to have them, you know, and we're not in control. These are proprietary type systems for councils, so we're not really in control of how much they cost. You know, we have to pay a certain amount each, you know, each year for the maintenance of those. We saved, you know, we've done work to save money on telephony. So we've gone over to internet-based telephony this time. So we have gone through a process of really refining costs and trying to cut them down. I'm just saying there's not a huge, you know, we can always find, you can always find the odd pound here and the odd pound there, and we may well do so. And we may well find, you know, some of the estimates that we've put in for maintenance contracts and things, they might come out a bit cheaper than we've put in. Some might come out a bit more. We don't know until we've got them. So this is sort of the best estimate at this point. But unless you're directing me, you know, or giving me a certain direction, I can come back with option 2. I'm not sure how I can develop 4 more options from that. I don't know what options you're asking for, because, as I say, I can shave a few bits off maybe here and there, but it isn't going to amount to more than a few pence per year per resident.
Okay, thank you. But just be mindful of, we've got about 10 hands up still now. They keep coming up. I mean, overall picture for me, I'm sat here watching, and an overall picture I'm getting a message is the option 2, with a way forward to sharpen your pencil. If it can't be sharpened anymore, then we're going to have to move to the pen. But I'm getting the picture of option 2 from listening to what most people are saying. Not everybody, of course. Sorry about the ones that aren't. But option 2 seems to be the favourite at the moment, looking at sharpening. Councillor Jimmy Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the clerk and deputy clerk for all the hard work they put into this. You can clearly see there's a lot of work gone into this. Obviously, you keep going backwards and forwards with it. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes, to be honest. My question is, could we take off the community grants, 4,500? Let's make a saving there, because obviously we don't really need it at the moment. Also, the civic events, this 2,400. I can't see us really going back to any kind of normality until maybe May or June if we're lucky next year. Could that be reduced at all? Thank you.
I mean, certainly the civic events is, you know, entirely in your control. If you don't want those, we can take that out of the budget. Bear in mind, though, if you want to put it back again next year, then that's an increase on the base. In terms of community grants, you certainly can take those out, but bear in mind that you would be removing us as a gold status council at that time, because it's one of the criteria is to have, you know, to invest in the community by way of community grants. That might be something that you want to do, but obviously being a gold council, one of only, you know, 60 or whatever in the country, brings certain benefits in terms of, you know, it made it easier, for instance, for us to get a loan, because we have that, you know, the loans board looked at it, and straight away we're, you know, a council that's got all the procedures and everything in place. So there's a risk to that as well.
Thank you.
Could it be reduced at all? Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Book, sorry.
The community grant, could it be reduced slightly to stay in the gold status or not?
It can certainly be reduced. You probably need to change your criteria for application, because most of the grants that we give tend to be several hundreds of pounds. So if you were reducing it down to, say, £1,000, the sort of level of grants that you would have would be relatively small, and we'd need to be able to justify that that was actually supporting the community in respect of the gold.
Thank you. Councillor Ty, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, looking at it, we seem to be moving in the right direction. We all agree that we don't want to see any cut. We're all agreeing that we don't want to see the reserves used. So the only thing I could see is that we have got to look at the staffing and see what we can do there. That would really pull it round. I mean, if you had a look at the staffing levels and got rid of a couple that are probably not needed, I don't know, but we need to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I can see a few things that I would need clarification on, but yeah, if we went to knock down the community grants to 2.5k, that's a 2k saving. Replacement car park meter contribution, that's 4k in the budget, that's 6. If that wasn't put in this year, that'd be a 6k saving, and already we're saving another 6k by my sums is about 1.5%. So we're now down to 16 and a bit, or 17, just over 17, rather than knocking on the door of 19. So there are savings here to be made. I take on board what the town clerk says, and it must be soul destroying for him to go through all this just for us to say, well, no, we want you to go through it again. But yeah, no, there is money there. And I keep making the point, it's a John Paul Keddy principle. If we just keep chipping away at all these figures, if we only save a few thousand here and a few thousand there, as percentages, penny-wise, it makes not a lot of difference. But as percentages, it soon starts racking up quite quickly. So option 2 with savings is really the only thing we have. But option 2 on its own isn't enough. We need to drag some more money out of our budget. We need to be saving money because we're not making it. Next year, when we're making it hand over fist, we can say, well, we don't need to put it up by anything more than 5% because we've made so much money. We're subsidising the precept from the cafe and the Tower Gardens, as we always intended. This is a one-off year. So let's just bite the bullet, get those savings made and move on.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thank you. From going on from that, the other biggest cost saving would be stop the Christmas lighting display from 2021, which is £20,000 in the budget. I think we need to have a debate about that. This year we didn't have any illuminations by East Lindsey District Council. Are we saying, okay, to preserve the services that we give to our town, that we want to have maybe just one tree rather than the lights display on Christmas period because of COVID? I think there are probably some savings to be made out of that huge amount of money, as what Councillor Kirk has said, needs to be looked at. It is a large sum of money, the largest in the budget of £20,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just comment on that, Councillor Anderson? So we're asking the people to go through the COVID-19 situation that they've been through, an absolutely dreadful 2020, and we've got a little bit of light at the end of the year with the Christmas, and we just want to take everything away from them and kick them in the teeth and say Merry Christmas. Hey, I don't want to be Scrooge. I don't want to be seen to be wasting people's money, but I can't take away their Christmas myself. So I just needed to have my say on that one. Sorry.
No, you're absolutely right, Mr. Mayor. Can I just quickly come back? I agree with you, do. But there's hard decisions, Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are you getting me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We pay ourselves £10,500 a year as councillors, £500 a year each. We're not forced to take that, are we? There's a saving of £10,500. Is that not worth thinking about? We're all here stood on our morals. What do we turn over per year, councillor, town clerk? What does it cost us to run? 700,000, did you say?
Yeah, that's the budget figure for the next year.
Yeah, and we're talking
Expenditure.
about bits of paper and Xerox machines and pennies and halfpennies. You know, get a grip. £700,000 we turn over. I didn't appreciate your Mr. Ty. Let's get rid of a couple. That's not the way you talk about your staff. I think that was a dreadful comment. Absolutely dreadful, disgraceful. But you know what we need to do is we want to keep services. We're going to have to pay. We'll cut our money. If anybody says anything to us, we'll have no £500 a year. We'll not bother with that. There you go. There's £10,500. Let's do that because that's what we need to do. No, let's show solidarity and let's us cut our money. We've cut our money. We're still stood there with our hands out. There's 10,500. It's not a problem, is it? Surely, everybody. What do you think?
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Councillor Danny Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I like that one, Councillor Dennis. I think they brought in the allowances so that not only the rich could be on the councils. I don't have a problem giving my allowance up, but I should imagine there's people that actually need that money because they don't want to have to pay to be on the council. It wouldn't bother me, but I'm just saying the reason they brought allowances in for councils was to stop the rich having the complete say. Anyway, this debate is good, and debating this budget is also good. It shows our residents that we all actually care. Whichever side of the fence you're on, whether you're a 30% riser or a 50% riser or a 5%, it shows our residents that we actually care how we're spending their money, whether it's pennies or pounds. They see that we care. We're passionate about it. I'm not going to fall out with anybody over how this goes, but I think the debate is very good and it's been a very interesting debate. Back to my question. Looking at this, we've lost £23,000 in turnover, which I don't think is that bad the year we're in. So my question is, if we only get that back, if we get that back next year, we're still going to be in we need 30% to run, because the total income is 114,000. Total expenditure is 700,000. Now, you know, that's it just staggers. We've got to increase our income. 138,000 last year. It's only dropped 23,000, yet we're still asking for a 30% increase. Now that is a worry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edgington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an interesting thing what very good point that Councillor Dennis made in respect of our allowances. £500 a year. We usually pay 25% tax on that, so there's a net of £400, which is about £8 a week. Now, I don't smoke anymore, but do cigarettes cost more than £8 a packet? I don't know. Perhaps someone can tell me.
I can't answer that one for you because I don't smoke, Councillor.
That's why I'm asking the question.
Only when I'm on fire. Councillor Billy Brooks, please.
Yeah, with regards to this councillor allowance, you know, some people, they wouldn't be able to stand up and represent their community if it was going to cost them money because they can't afford to do that. So I think it's a bit almost elitist to be saying that we should get rid of that when there's people that wouldn't be able to be a councillor if it weren't for that allowance, you know, without that, so they don't have to pay out. Because some people can't afford it. So I just think that's wrong. Totally wrong.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Totally agree with Brooks Senior and Councillor Brooks Junior, their comments. I don't see people that are getting district council allowances, which are in the thousands, and county council allowances for councillors, which is in tens of thousands. saying we will not receive our allowances. We're talking about £500 here, £500, which I believe town councillors do more work, okay, than some district councillors and some county councillors get when they're getting thousands of pounds. But I don't see that coming across from some of the comments from district councillors tonight. I think that's absolutely appalling. I know where Councillor Dennis was coming from. He said it cap in hand when he was looking at savings. I know that. I know him personally. He wouldn't mean that. Okay. But if we go down that path, I think it's a really bad path to go down, and it sends out, as what Councillor Brooks Jr. said, it sends out an elitist message. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I know we need to move on. I know we're trying to push to move on. I just would like to throw one other thing into the mixo here. Totally throwing everything out of the scene as such. And I've got some figures. I can see that we've got a 700,000 expenditure. We've got an income of just over the 100,000. I'd just like to ask the clerk to just clarify for me, at what point do we not need a percentage increase? Because there's going to come a point, and I'm looking at it like this, there's going to come a point that we'll go on a Band D property, for argument's sake. There's going to come a point that a Band D property, on the income we've got this year, at that point, if we stayed, everything broke even, the same as what we've got this year as income, so no further gains to the income, which gain would be nice because it means we can lower things. But at what further point in the pound would the Band D, for argument's sake, need to be so that we don't never have to put an increase in there? Because an increase is on what we've got this year. So we'll say, for argument's sake, this year it's 100,000. Sorry, it's £100. A 10% increase is what it is. There's going to come a time that figure is going to get to that point that we no longer need to put a percentage increase in. Thank you.
I think there's a bit of misunderstanding there, because obviously you've got inflation, you've got changes in costs all the time. So there's never going to be a point in time unless costs don't go up. If you put income up, that might balance it. But what we've seen this year is income is actually dropped. And I think we need to take a balanced view that actually next year, it isn't going to be, for council-wise, businesses who start in June, it may be slightly different. But in terms of those first three months of the year, I think there will be a continuation of the reduction in income. I expect car park income to continue to be down. I expect the cemetery income to continue to be down, etc. So there isn't, there's never been a time that any council hasn't considered putting its charge to the ratepayer up if there is inflation. There's only two sides to the story. You either put them up or you reduce if costs have risen. So if there was never any inflation and we never got any change in income, then that figure would stay the same. But I don't think there's been any time in known history where that's actually happened. I also want to reply, while I can, just to Councillor Ty's comment about there being two staff that just disappear that we don't really need, when I've reported to you several times during this year that we're actually at maximum capacity, and many staff are actually going out of their way to do more than they're employed to do. So I think council needs to bear that in mind. And I thank any staff out there who are watching tonight. I'm thanking you for the work that you do, because I know how hard you work and how much you contribute to the services that this council has. Now, if council are saying they want to cut services, that's a different matter, because that means that jobs that currently exist may not be needed in the future. But I don't like the comment that people aren't working hard and therefore that slack be absorbed. I think that's not something that I recognise as town clerk responsible for all of the staff that work for the council.
Thank you for that, Mr. Clark. And I do appreciate that. And I understand exactly what you're saying. You've got inflation, but inflation is inflation. It is you 1, 2, 3, 4%. I was meaning to get down to somewhere that we would be realistic working with inflation rather than trying to make up the bit in the middle, if you know what I mean. I do understand we've got inflation and we can work with inflation, and that would be precept inflation, 2, 3, 4%. But we do seem to have this bit in the middle that we need to try and build that bridge. And it's that bridge I was trying to get to, that sort of figure, not the general running inflation, deflation side of things. If I was misunderstood.
I think the issue is, in general terms, we can manage with that inflationary percentage. This year has been very, very different for two reasons. One is COVID, and as Councillor Brooks says, 24,000 so far this year, probably more by the end of the year in terms of lost income and additional expenditure. But when council set the budget last January, it knew that it was going to need around about a 9% increase this year just to stand still. That's before inflation and other things. So you've got that built in. Additionally, we took money out of reserves last year to fund some of the thing. So that is also then you're not using those reserves this year. So that's an additional cost. That's why we're looking at such a big expenditure. And that's why I've warned in options 3 and 4, if you start taking money from reserves again, you're going to be faced with a 50, 60, 70% increase in future years just to get back to where you are now. Because you've borrowed out of those reserves to artificially keep the precept down. And that's where we get with a balanced budget. Balanced budget going forward has to be balanced over a number of years. We've taken some money out in the past. We've now been hit with a pandemic, which has reduced our reserves. So we need to put some money back into those reserves. Otherwise, we're going to be in a very vulnerable position going forward if either the pandemic continues or you're faced with, unexpected costs. So, the tree scenario in Tower Gardens, a very valid one. I mean, we have had a lot of trees down this year, which has unexpectedly cost, thousands of pounds that we didn't expect to spend. So the council's expanded, it's taken on more services. The risks with that expand as well. There are more things that can go wrong and that we have to keep an eye on. So that's why we've got a problem this year. If we can get that resolved, then, and COVID disappears, then we get back into that more routine situation of just being able to expand on inflation if there are no new services coming along.
Thank you. Can I just be mindful that we're on agenda item number 5. Some of us have still got 6 agenda items left. We need to be finding an answer or moving this forward now to the next meeting. Councillor Brooks, Danny Brooks, you've still got your hand up. I don't know if it's from last time.
Yeah, it was. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yeah, if we could move it on, I do think we need to make a decision. I don't think deferring it is the answer, really. We've got to make a decision. At the end of the day, we give a service. Any service you get costs. It's got to cost. We've took more on. Mr. Mayor, when we was in the last council, we wanted it. We wanted to do it and give residents a service. And as Councillor Anderson agrees, we're giving an excellent service. And you're going to have to pay for it. You've got to pay for it. Whatever you do, you have to pay the piper. Somewhere along the line, you can't not cut services and not pay for it. You can cut services and you don't have to pay for it. But we don't want to cut services. Our residents deserve better than to be cut services. You know, and but you want to keep services, but you don't want to pay for it. How's that? Please explain to an athlete, or was it an elitist, how that works, please? Because I would really like to know how you can not cut services and not spend. I mean, it's if you want to keep the services, you've got to pay the piper. It's as simple as that. You can't do it for nothing. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, I'd just like to propose that we defer it till November, regardless of, I wouldn't like to vote on anything tonight. I think there's plenty of options out there, maybe a few talks, emails between us, but for me, I'd rather just defer it to November. We haven't got to make a decision. We haven't got to vote on anything. We haven't got to be pushed or bullied into a corner. We're still allowed time to think about this and renegotiate it till we come, till we all agree that we're somewhere near. For me, I just think I'd like to propose we defer it to November's meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Finlay. Can I just point out that whatever happens tonight, we have ruled out option 3 or 4. We've made that quite clear as councillors, whether we speak passionately, whether we speak just on our own. But we've ruled 3 and 4 out. So we're actually we're aiming for 1 and 2, or 1 or 2. Whichever cost you think we can cut. Councillor Kirk, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I make a proposal, please, that we ask the clerk to move on with option 2, but to bring us back to the November meeting a list of savings that can be made that don't directly impact services that this council delivers. That way we can have a list of maybe 10, 15 different things, the savings, and then we as a council can decide what we're happy to lose and what we're not. Otherwise, we'll still be here at Christmas time debating this. It is a very complex issue, and it's right we debate it fully, but we do need to have some decisions made eventually. So that's a proposal, Mr. Mayor.
I think that's a very good proposal, Councillor Kirk. Councillor Anderson, I'll bring you back in quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did actually make that proposal about 20 minutes ago, and I think I was seconded by Councillor Dennis when I said I was hovering between option 1 and 2. But yes, I'm happy enough to amend my proposal, as long as Councillor Dennis is happy as well, to go along with Councillor Kirk. I think the biggest savings, and I know where you're coming from on the papers that we've got, is the Christmas lights. But there are other savings there to be made, Mr. Mayor. And I think we need to actually we need a clear direction tonight, okay? And then that is option 2, okay, as what has been proposed by Councillor Kirk. And that sets the clerk on objectives to actually look at further savings that which could offset the precept. Can I quickly say that, Councillor Dennis, you're not an elitist, you're an ordinary person, and I know what you were saying, cap in hand, just to steer people into their right way of thinking. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor
I'll
Saxon.
leave the meeting.
Sorry?
Excuse me, I'm going to leave the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. To leave the meeting. Thank
you. We'll all end up leaving it at this stage. Can I just point out quickly, Councillor Anderson, what I'm going to go about the £20,000. I just don't want us to be hypocrites here, sticking our oar in at ELDC and LCC for cutting lights, etc., illuminations, and us doing the same. Let's not go down that route. That was all.
I totally agree with you, Mr. Mayor, but it's just, it stands out there when we're looking at cut. That's all I'm saying.
Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to be voting on any options tonight. I think that option 2 should be looked at and brought back with savings, and I think we should just defer till November when that's happened. So I would second Councillor Finley's. The clerk's got to stay option 2 with a few other options of savings. He doesn't have to bring any more options other than, yes, you could cut the community grants because there's not a lot of clubs meeting. You could cut the civic event because actually we didn't have one last year. We may not have another one this year, so that's another £5,000 saved. I think they're the sort of options I want to see come forward, not new options of the whole budget, just looking at option 2 and then bringing it down a little bit. Thank you.
So have you got that, Town Clerk? I think that was a proposal to look at option 2 then, was it? And come back.
That was, I think it was basically seconding Councillor Steve Kirk's. I think Councillor Anderson and Councillor Dennis have both said the same, but I don't want to turn around in November and say, well, you voted for option 2. We're not saving it. I want the vote to happen in November. So then we vote on whether we're going to go with option 2 or not.
Well, that's the way I understood what Councillor Brooks has said, Mr. Mayor. That was part of my proposal.
Okay, so we've got it proposed and seconded that we bring option 2 back in November for a decision to be made in the November meeting.
With further saving options.
Further savings options that Councillor.
Yeah, I'm happy with that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we've got a proposal and a seconder that we come back. You've heard the proposal and seconder. When we can go to the vote for that one. So all in favour, please show. That's carried, thank you. Okay, moving on with the meeting. Agenda item number 6, securing sites optional paper.
Mayor, I was asked to bring this back some while ago. It was deferred last time. Realistically, I'm not recommending any of the options that I've been able to come up with, and they all have significant cost implications, which I'm guessing, in light of the budget, you may wish to defer this item more permanently and actually see what happens on these sites over the next 12 months.
We've got a proposal that we...
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I totally agree with the Mayor. Due to the budgetary constraints, that we just note this paper and just keep a watching brief. Councillor Dan Kirk did actually suggest that we could put some CCTV up at a cheap rate, maybe, to have a look and make sure, or loop it into the CCTV that gives us due notice of what is happening on our sites, maybe in future times when we have more money at our disposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to second that we move this because it's not the, we're looking at cutting back, making more expenditure is not the way forward at this moment in time. So I'm happy to second that. So we've got a proposal and a seconder that we defer this for a long period of time. All in favour, please show. That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item number 7, public facing risk assessments, report and risk assessment attached.
These risk assessments are in front of you, but of course the pace of change that affects these is such that we're changing them all the time. And I do wonder whether or not bringing them back to either council or this committee on a monthly basis is actually a good use of time. We're having to artificially write them to get them to the deadline for the meeting, whereas they might well change tomorrow. We are keeping them within the office up to date for what we require, but just rewriting them fully when we know that there might be another change in a week or two's time does seem a little bit of extra work that we could do without with at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering, should we make them quarterly?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
I'll put a motion forward to pass to make it quarterly. Would that be more suitable, Town Clerk?
I think they should be part of the governance, report that comes quarterly. We can report. I would make and sign off any immediate changes that are required by law, and then we report back to council what's happened during the quarter, and then that gives you the opportunity of making any additional suggestions at that point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, we've got a proposal and a second. We've got that because I've got Councillor Cunnington next to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to support that. I mean, even if it was 6 monthly, that would be fine by me, so long as we're notified via email of any severe changes that the clerk has to make. He does his job well. He is keeping an eye on the ball. We are in uncertain times. and it's a lot of time, a lot of paperwork in the office, really for nothing. So even if it was 6 monthly, so long as we get an email notification of any severe changes that he's had to make, I'm more than happy.
Thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree with Councillor Dennis and Councillor Anderson. I'm not even that concerned about an email about major changes. The problem is we're all in the same boat, really. Anyone who's running anything like that, the situation is so fluid. It can change not just on a daily, but in half a day. So I think quarterly is where it should be.
That's marvellous. We've got a proposer and a seconder that we move to monthly. All in favour, please show. Thank you. That's carried. Agenda item number 8, Neighbourhood Development Plan Verbal Report.
We've had feedback from the consultants. They've given us some consultation activities that we would start the process of consultation once the feedback has come from East Lindsey, which is expected by the end of this month. That would be online questionnaire, printed questionnaires, leaflet campaign, an online workshop run by the consultants and a couple of members of the steering committee. On our website, on the ELDC website, some posters around town, on social media, and an article in the news papers. There is a part that councillors could really assist with, and that's with things like the printed questionnaires and the leaflet campaign. If it's possible, if they're printed in an office, if some councillors or all councillors could just perhaps deliver some in their local area, that would be of great help in terms of getting the message out to the public, because ultimately, obviously, this will go to a public vote, and therefore they need to be given the opportunity to respond to the neighbourhood plan as it's currently written, and before the inspector looks at it. So any money for printing, and there'll probably be a few targeted ads on social media using Facebook, etc. Those will come out of the reserve for this particular item. So there is the money there to do that in reserves.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edgerton, did you leave your hand up from last time? I think you did. Just checking. I think you did.
Move it be noted, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kirk, just before we move, Councillor Brooks, sorry, before Kirk, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave the meeting now, so thank you.
Okay, thank you for your attendance. Councillor Kirk.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, the town clerk mentioned councillors delivering their questionnaires. More than happy. I think we should all be taking part in that. Will that include a prepaid envelope for them to send it back, or how will they be returned? Is my question. I know it's another cost, but if as Councillor Dennis keeps saying, if you want to do the job, you have to do it properly. Without a prepay, are you anticipating we will wait there until they fund it in and then collect it back from them, or allow them to do it to their leisure and then post it back?
We haven't got the cost yet of what a prepaid postal return would be. That's something we'll need to determine. All of the questionnaires will be available online, obviously. So we're hoping that it will be a relatively small number who will need to respond in a written form. The written ones will come back to us. The ones that are filled out electronically will be sent on to the consultants sort of straight away. So we will resolve that issue one way or the other in terms of how much it's going to cost to do that.
Well, nothing if they don't post them back, does it?
Sorry?
I thought it only costs when they post them back.
Yes, yeah. We'll look at it. I need to just know what the cost will be of that service to make sure that we've got sufficient in the budget to cover it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So with Councillor Anderson proposed that we note this, I'm happy to second that. All in favour, please show. That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item number 9, Towns Fund application, verbal report.
I had a video conferencing meeting with the 2 officers from East Lindsey who are involved. I understand that the application for Tower Gardens is within the overall town centre project, and the allowance that's been made in there is 250,000, so it's £50,000 short. I understand that there will need to be a contribution outside of that fund, but the officers from East Lindsey have indicated that we may be able to get some external, other external funding to make up that difference. Revenue costs, obviously we don't know what the scheme is completely yet, so we don't know what those revenue costs are, but obviously there will be some going forward, but probably this money is not going to come through until 2022. So we're going to be looking at least, we're not going to be looking at the next financial year, it'll be the year after that, the revenue costs start to come in.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was looking on the government site. Perhaps our 2 representatives could tell us, Councillor Dennis or Councillor Ty, that we have been successful in our bid, along with 100 other towns across the UK. Is that correct? Yes or no, please?
Councillor Dennis or Ty.
Sorry, Councillor, it's not a yes and no answer, really. The funding bids are going forward, and then we shall have to wait. But nobody's had any results yet. It's all looking very promising, I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ty, did you want to comment?
Yes, it's going to be. I believe it's going to be a couple of weeks before any decisions are made, and then possibly some more work done on the figures and the projects will have to go forward. Thank you.
Could I quickly come in? Sorry, could I quickly come in, Mr. Mayor? I read an article that the government has made a decision, the minister has made a decision, and if you look on the government website, there's 100 successful bids been made on there, and the decision was made last Friday. Perhaps I'm wrong or misunderstanding it, but that decision for 100 bids on the £3.2 billion has been made. Newark, I understand, has got 25 million, and the decision for the rest of the other bids have not been made yet, as of yet. That's my understanding, and that's according to UK government website. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I heard that Newark had got theirs as well somewhere this week. Councillor Kirk, you might have an answer for us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Different towns' funds were being put in at different times. The first round went in July, and they have received their results. Ours will not be going until the end of this month. So we definitely have not got the money yet, but equally so, we definitely have not got the money yet. We haven't put ourselves in. It goes to East Lindsey District Council for them to sign it off on Wednesday, which they will do, and it'll be submitted on Friday. As Councillor Ty said quite rightly, there's then a few week period while they look at what we've asked for money for, and then there's a little bit of horse trading that goes on after that while we agree ahead of terms, because they may only like 3 or 4 of our projects. They may only like one, but they might like all of them. So we're still a way off getting the money in the bank yet. But like Councillor Dennis, I'm quietly confident we've got some excellent projects there, and we should, if there's any justice in the world, we should come out with some money.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a proposal that we note this verbal report? Councillor Cunnington.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to just thank all the officers for what they've done. Councillor Ty, Councillor Dennis for obviously their work within this thing. And yes, I propose we move this.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, happy enough to second that.
Thank you. All in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Agenda item number 10, invitation for council representative to sit on the outside body attached. To consider the invitation from Skegness Police to have a representative on a new steering group which will look at ways to tackle complex issues in the community. Please note this involves attending a socially distanced training event on Sunday the 25th of October, 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. at Butlins, Skegness. Places are limited and allocated on a first come, first served basis. Councillor Kirk has got his hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is an excellent initiative. If you read the flyer that goes with it, it really is a good piece of work that they're planning to do. And it's all about, you know, community policing, how the money is spent, how the budget can be targeted. Sadly, I can't make that date, but I certainly think, if at all possible, we should be sending some people to that training so they can lead it on behalf of the council.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kirk. Councillor Mark Anderson.
Yeah, thank you. I would absolutely love to go onto that steering group. As you know, I've been asking some difficult questions about community policing in Skegness. Unfortunately, I am isolating and I can't make, because of I'm isolating against COVID, and I can't actually make that meeting. But I would dearly have loved to actually go into the steering committee and making sure that we get the best community police for our residents here in Skegness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I can't make that meeting. However, if I could propose Councillor Adrian Finlay, if he's available, I know he would do a thorough job and would bring back us all the information that we needed, assuming he would like to do it, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy enough to second that.
As Councillor, I'll just bring Councillor Trevor Burnham in first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You'd be pleased to know that myself and Councillor Adrian Finlay are booked in on Sunday, and we're really looking forward to it.
Well, there you go. Then we've got two councillors that are actually enrolled for the course, so I think that will give us all. Do we need to? We don't need to vote on this, then, do we? Or all in favour of them representing? Do we need to vote, Town Clerk?
No, you don't need to vote if because it's open to anybody to go, and they've already booked on. So you don't need to vote to do that, but you can vote that they're in the council capacity if you wish to.
Mr. Mayor, I think we need to vote that they go on as a council official capacity, making sure that Skegness Town Council is represented there under the banner.
I'll second that, Councillor Anderson. I believe that we should make it aware that Councillor Burnham and Councillor Finlay are for us. Yeah.
I think you're on mute, Mr. Mayor.
I muted myself. Oh, all those in favour, please show. Let's get into that time of night. I think that's carried. Thank you, Councillor Finlay and Councillor Burnham. Okay, we're going to say, obviously, we're going to have some people. We're going to move on to agenda item number 11. We're going to lose Councillor Edgington, Councillor Dennis, Councillor Billy Brooks, Councillor Cunnington. I'd like to thank you for attending tonight. Thank you very much for your time.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Yeah, good night, everybody. Good night.
I'll be leaving tomorrow.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good
Okay,
night.
quickly moving on to agenda item number 11 then at last. We need to get these through tonight. Planning applications for consideration. 11.1, Mr. I. Ellis, planning permission for the erection of a building to provide two number of offices at the Skegness Water Leisure Park, Walls Lane, Ingermell, Skegness. Councillor Anderson.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy enough to move it. I think it's nice to see the extra investment in Skegness, although it's only for erection of a building to provide two offices. So, yeah, I'll move it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll
Usually,
second it, Mr. Mayor.
thank you. Councillor Finlay, did you want to comment? No, he's always left, sorry. Okay, I've had it seconded. All in favour, please show. I'll raise my hand. Thank you, it's carried. Moving on to 11.2, Mr. K. Carl, planning permission alteration to existing flats to include replacement balconies, patio, path and installation of an access control gate and fencing to a maximum of a height of 1.8 metre at 1 to 28 Alexander Court, Skegness. Councillor Anderson.
Sorry, again, I'd like to move it. I think it's within the existing boundaries. It's just on the outside of the balconies are going to be installed, and the path and patio are all already there. So it's just an upgrading. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Wondering if there's been any objections, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Chairman Clark.
No objections to this one, no.
I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, got proposer and seconder. All in favour, please show. Thank you, that's carried. 11.3, Mr. K. Carl, planning permission alterations existing building to include external lift shaft, replacement precast concrete frames, balcony frames and steel columns and beams, replacement of some doors and windows, construction of paths and patio areas of the seating, erection of gates and fencing up to a maximum of 1.8 metres, Richmond Court communal building, Richmond Court, Skegness. Councillor Anderson.
Again, I'd like to move it, Mr. Mayor. This is part of the social housing complex in Skegness, along with Alexander Court. It's already upgrading the facilities for local residents who are tenants there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any objections, Town Clerk?
No.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that, please?
Go on.
Councillor Burnham, seconded. All in favour, please show. Thank you, that's carried. Moving on to 11.4, Skegness Property Limited. Planning permission erection of a building comprising of 4 number of units to be used under the use class E, A or B or C, commercial business and service use, or hot food takeaway of the town and county planning uses classes amendment in England, regulation 2020, with associated car park and construction of vehicle and pedestrian access. 107 to 111 Roman Banks, Skegness. Am I right in thinking that we've had this before us recently?
Could I just ask the clerk a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, please do.
Do I need to declare an interest, Steve, on this one?
I'm not sure, but what is retail floor?
Because of the the hot food takeaway.
It's only proposed, Danny. It doesn't exist at the moment.
Absolutely, there's no hot food proposed there.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Ty.
Councillor Ty, you're on mute.
Councillor Tony Ty.
Yes, I propose that we move this.
Okay, Councillor Kirk, have you got your hand up still?
Yeah, very, very happy to second this. It's nice to see the site brought into use and to be upgraded from how it's been for many, many years. So yeah, really appreciate this coming to the town. So happy to second it.
Okay, thank you. I do believe we had this in front of us not so long ago. Councillor Danny Brooks, did you wish to comment again?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, left it up, but I think it's a fantastic development, as Councillor Kirk just said.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to the vote then, please show. Yeah, that's carried. 11.5, Mr. and Miss Shelbourne and Swift. Planning permission, re-extension and alterations to existing dwelling to provide a kitchen, living room, dining area with an attached single garage with a bedroom, dressing room and ensuite in the existing and proposed roof space. Existing conservatory and detached garage on site to be removed. That's at 102 Oil Lake Drive, Skegness. Councillor Anderson.
Mayor, can I just say there are 4 objections on this one?
Okay, thank you, 10 o'clock. Councillor Anderson.
I think you're on mute, Councillor Anderson.
Sorry, can we hear the objections then, please, Mr. Town Clerk? Sorry.
The objections all relate to the size of the extension. I don't know whether you can see my cursor on the screen, but it's this area on the right hand of the 2 pictures. It's the back end. If I go to another view, you can see that the roof on the extension here at the top is higher, and they're all saying that if I look at one where there's the plan of the site, the extension is going to come down further into the garden and take up quite a large amount, and therefore the properties around it are saying that this will cause overshadowing, that it's not consistent with the properties around them, and there'll be a loss of privacy and not planning issues necessarily, some of the others, but a loss of light and etc. They think it's too big for the space.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, in view of what the Town Clerk has said and looking at the site, I think, again, I agree with the objectors. I think it's over intensification of the site, too close to the boundaries, and will obscure light to the neighbours adjacent to this site. Thank you. So move rejection.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to second Mr. Councillor Anderson, please.
Okay, so we've had it proposed and seconded that we object. All in favour, please show. It's carried, I think. Carried, Town Clerk, I think, hasn't it?
Yeah, five have voted.
Councillor Burnham seconded it, so he's got it. So yeah, so we've got 5, 6. Yeah, it's carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the end of tonight's meeting. Thank everybody for attending.